The victory over the conquered was bittersweet. Earth had proven its strength, but the scars of war were everywhere. Cities lay in ruins, their skies still clouded with smoke and ash. Families mourned loved ones who would never return, their sacrifices etched into the collective memory of humanity. Yet amid the grief there was also hope, a fragile but unyielding belief that a better future was possible. In the days following the battle, leaders from across the globe gathered at the United Nations headquarters to discuss what came next. President Laura Bennett stood at the podium, her voice steady as she addressed the assembly. "We have fought not just for ourselves, but for every species oppressed by the Concord. Today we stand united, not as conquerors but as liberators. Together, we will rebuild the galaxy on principles of freedom and equality." Her words resonated deeply, earning applause from the delegates. But the work ahead would be immense. The Concord's collapse left a power vacuum, and without careful planning, chaos could spiral out of control. Humanity knew it couldn't rule alone. It needed allies. Daniel Carter and Mia Torres played a crucial role in forging those alliances. Using secure communication channels, they reached out to rebel factions and liberated species, inviting them to join a new coalition. Representatives traveled to Earth, their ships docking at orbital stations as negotiations began. For the first time in centuries, voices long silenced by the Concord were heard. Dr. Olivia Grant remained in her lab, refining the harmonic resonance technology. Though the immediate threat had passed, she understood that peace required preparation. Her team worked tirelessly to adapt the weapons for non-lethal purposes, tools for disabling hostile forces without causing unnecessary harm. "This isn't just about winning wars," she told Colonel Ryan Blake during one of their late-night discussions. "It's about preventing them." Blake nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're right, but old habits die hard. Some people might see this as an opportunity to take revenge instead of building bridges." "That's why we need leaders like you," Olivia replied. "People who understand that power isn't about domination, it's about responsibility." As weeks turned into months, the galaxy began to heal. Rebel factions established provisional governments, working alongside human advisors to stabilize their territories. Trade routes reopened, connecting worlds once isolated by the Concord's strict controls. Slowly but surely, life returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such upheaval. Ambassador Kale, however, refused to accept defeat. He retreated to a hidden stronghold deep within uncharted space, rallying loyalists to his cause. Rumors spread of secret experiments aimed at creating advanced weaponry capable of crushing humanity once and for all. But for now, he remained a shadowy figure, lurking on the fringes of the galaxy. Back on Earth, Daniel found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. He remembered standing aboard Ecliptica, humiliated by Ambassador Kale's dismissal. Now he stood in the Situation Room, advising President Bennett on how to negotiate treaties with newly liberated civilizations. It felt surreal, almost like a dream, but it was real, and it was worth every sacrifice. One evening, as he walked through the streets of Washington, D.C., Daniel noticed children playing under the stars. Their laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the somber mood that had gripped the world just months earlier. Watching them, he felt a surge of hope. These kids would grow up in a galaxy shaped by humanity's courage and resilience. They would inherit a legacy of unity and determination. Nearby, Colonel Blake stood on the steps of the Capitol building, gazing at the same sky. Beside him, Captain Lisa Harper leaned against the railing, her arms crossed. "Do you think we'll ever see peace?" she asked quietly. Blake hesitated before answering. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. We've given people a chance to try. That's more than most civilizations get." Harper smiled faintly. "Guess that's something, huh?" "It's everything," Blake replied firmly. Meanwhile, in Dr. Grant's lab, progress continued. The resonance technology had evolved beyond weapons, finding applications in energy production, medical treatments, and even terraforming barren planets. Olivia marveled at how far they'd come, her mind racing with possibilities. "Imagine it," she said to her assistant one day. "A galaxy where no one has to fight for survival, where everyone has a seat at the table." Her assistant grinned. "Sounds like a dream." "It doesn't have to be," Olivia replied. "Not if we keep working toward it." Months later, representatives from dozens of species convened aboard a massive starship orbiting Earth. Dubbed the Galactic Accord, this new coalition aimed to replace the oppressive Concord with a system based on cooperation and mutual respect. Humanity's role was clear. It wasn't to dominate, but to lead by example. At the opening ceremony, Daniel delivered a speech that echoed President Bennett's earlier words. "For too long, fear ruled this galaxy," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of each other. But today we choose a different path. A path of hope, of trust, of unity. Let us build a future where no civilization is left behind." Applause erupted, filling the room with warmth and resolve. Among the crowd, Vela watched silently, her glowing eyes reflecting pride. She had risked everything to help humanity, and now she saw the fruits of that gamble. The galaxy was flawed, but it was moving in the right direction. That night, Daniel joined President Bennett and her advisors for a quiet dinner. The meal was simple, yet meaningful, a reminder of the values they fought to protect. As they ate, Bennett raised her glass. "To the future," she said softly. "To the future," the others echoed. Outside, the stars shone brightly, their light guiding humanity forward. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was theirs to shape. From the ashes of war, a new era had begun, an era defined not by conquest, but by collaboration. And though challenges lay ahead, humanity knew it could face them together. For now, the galaxy belonged to everyone. Every civilization, every species, every individual had earned their place at the table. And if anyone tried to take that away again, they would find humanity ready, not just to defend, but to inspire. The stars whispered promises of endless possibilities, and humanity listened, ready to write the next chapter of its story among them. The aftermath of the battle at Orion's belt left humanity both victorious and vulnerable. The destruction of the orbital nexus had dealt a crippling blow to the galactic concord, but it was only a temporary setback. The enemy fleet had retreated, regrouping in distant star systems while plotting their next move. For Earth, the victory came at a heavy cost. Ships lost, lives sacrificed, and resources stretched thin. Yet, despite the scars, hope burned brighter than ever. Colonel Ryan Blake stood in the war room of Earth's orbital command center, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. Blue markers represented human-controlled territories, while red ones highlighted areas still under conquered influence. Between them lay contested zones, battlegrounds waiting to erupt into chaos. Blake clenched his fists as he studied the map, knowing the fight was far from over. "We've bought ourselves some time," he said, addressing the assembled leaders. "But the Concord will return stronger and angrier. We need to strike before they recover." President Laura Bennett nodded, her expression resolute. "Agreed. But where do we hit them next? They're spread across too many systems for us to chase them all." Daniel Carter stepped forward, pointing to a cluster of red markers near the edge of the map. "Here," he said firmly. "This is the Concord supply line, a network of outposts and resource hubs feeding their war machine. If we cut them off, we cripple their ability to rebuild," Mia Torres added. "And it's not just about supplies. These outposts are also communication hubs. Take them out, and we disrupt their coordination." Blake considered this, then turned to Dr. Olivia Grant. "Can the resonance weapons handle fortified targets like these?" Olivia hesitated before answering. "They can, but it depends on the defenses. Some of these outposts might have shield generators similar to the Nexus. We'll need precise targeting and flawless execution." "Then that's what we'll do," Blake replied. "Prepare the fleet. We're hitting every outpost in the sector one by one." The operation began under the cover of darkness, or what passed for darkness in the endless void of space. Stealth ships equipped with cloaking devices slipped past Concord patrols, planting beacons to guide the main fleet. When the first target came into view, a massive orbital station bristling with cannons and drones, the humans struck without warning. Captain Lisa Harper led the assault, her ship darting through enemy fire as resonance weapons targeted the station's shields. The energy pulses rippled outward, destabilizing the barriers until they collapsed entirely. With the defenses down, strike teams deployed, landing on the station to disable its core systems. Inside, the resistance was fierce. Automated turrets fired relentlessly, forcing Harper's team to take cover behind debris. Engineers worked quickly to override security protocols, shutting down weapon systems and opening access points. Despite the danger, the humans pushed forward, driven by determination. Finally, they reached the control room, where a group of conquered officers tried to mount a last stand. Harper raised her rifle, shouting, "Surrender or you die here." The officers hesitated, then dropped their weapons, realizing they were outnumbered. As engineers planted explosives, Harper gave the order to evacuate. Moments later, the station erupted in a fiery explosion, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. One by one, the outposts fell. Each victory weakened the conquered further, disrupting their supply lines and sowing confusion among their ranks. News of the attacks spread quickly, emboldening dissident factions within the coalition. Rebel groups seized the opportunity to rise up, attacking Concord forces in their own territories. Humanity's campaign had ignited a galaxy-wide rebellion. Amidst the chaos, Ambassador Kale seethed with rage. His once unshakable authority was crumbling, undermined by failures and dissent. In a private meeting aboard his flagship, he addressed his advisors, his voice cold and sharp. "The humans have made fools of us," he snarled. "Their defiance cannot go unpunished. Order all available fleets to converge on Earth. We will crush them completely." An advisor spoke up cautiously. "Ambassador, our forces are still recovering. Launching an invasion now could leave us exposed to further rebellions." Kyle slammed his fist on the table. "Then suppress the rebels. Crush them before they grow stronger. Once Earth is destroyed, the rest of the galaxy will fall back in line." Orders went out across the conquered's territories, mobilizing fleets and deploying reinforcements. Meanwhile, rebel factions intensified their efforts, launching coordinated strikes against key targets. The galaxy descended into turmoil, a battlefield of shifting alliances and broken loyalties. Back on Earth, preparations for the final showdown accelerated. Factories operated around the clock, producing new ships and weapons. Pilots trained rigorously, running simulations of large-scale battles. Intelligence operatives monitored conquered movements, predicting their next attack. Daniel Carter and Mia Torres worked tirelessly to strengthen ties with rebel factions. Using secure channels, they coordinated joint operations, pooling resources, and sharing intelligence. Together, they planned a massive offensive aimed at breaking the Conquered's hold on the galaxy, once and for all. Dr. Olivia Grant remained in her lab, refining the resonance technology. Her latest breakthrough allowed the weapons to emit targeted pulses, disabling specific systems without causing widespread destruction. This precision would prove invaluable in the coming battles. As the days passed, tension mounted. Reports poured in of conquered fleets massing near Earth's borders. The enemy was preparing for a decisive assault, determined to annihilate humanity and restore their dominance. President Bennett addressed the nation one final time. Standing before cameras, she spoke with unwavering resolve. "Today, we face the greatest challenge in our history. The Conquered seeks to destroy us, but they underestimate who we are. We are humans, resilient, courageous, and united. Together we will defend our home and claim our place among the stars." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring millions to rally behind the cause. Streets filled with volunteers eager to contribute, whether by joining the military, working in factories, or simply supporting the war effort in any way they could. Humanity stood united, ready to fight for its future. The day of reckoning arrived. Concord fleets emerged from hyperspace, surrounding Earth in a ring of steel and fire. Their ships unleashed devastating barrages, bombarding orbital defenses and surface installations. Cities trembled under the onslaught, skies illuminated by explosions. But humanity was ready. The Harbinger-class fleet launched from hidden stations, catching the enemy by surprise. Resonance weapons disabled Concord shields, allowing human ships to close the distance and engage in brutal dogfights. Explosions lit up the void as fighters clashed, each side fighting desperately for survival. On the ground, civilians took shelter as planetary defenses fought back. Missile batteries fired salvos into orbit, targeting enemy ships overhead. Engineers worked frantically to repair damaged systems, keeping the resistance alive. At the heart of the battle, Colonel Blake led the charge aboard the Eclipse. His ship danced through enemy fire, delivering crippling blows to conquered vessels. Over comms, he shouted orders, rallying his forces. "Hold the line, for Earth, for freedom." Nearby, Captain Harper commanded a squadron of bombers, targeting Concord command ships. Her pilots flew with unmatched skill, weaving through enemy formations and striking vital points. One by one, the Concord's flagships fell, their crews overwhelmed by the relentless assault. As the tide turned, rebel factions joined the fray, attacking Concord forces from behind. Caught between two fronts, the enemy began to falter. Ships retreated in disarray, abandoning the fight. Ambassador Cale watched in horror as his fleet unraveled, his dreams of conquest shattered. When the dust settled, Earth stood victorious. The Concord's grip on the galaxy had been broken, its forces scattered and demoralized. Humanity had proven itself, not just as survivors, but as warriors capable of changing the course of history. In the silence that followed, Daniel Carter gazed at the stars, his heart swelling with pride. The journey had been long and difficult, but humanity had earned its place among the stars. And though challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together. For now, the battle was won. But the story of humanity's rise was only beginning. The destruction of the AI core sent ripples through the Galactic Concord, but it wasn't enough to bring the coalition to its knees. The enemy fleet retreated in disarray, their ships scattering like leaves caught in a storm. For the first time in centuries, the Concord's iron grip on the galaxy faltered. But even as the humans celebrated their hard-fought victory, they knew it was only the beginning. Colonel Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, his face etched with exhaustion, but also pride. Around him, the crew worked tirelessly to assess damage and tend to the wounded. The ship had taken heavy fire during the battle, its hull scarred by laser blasts and missile impacts. Smoke lingered in the air, and the hum of repair drones echoed faintly through the corridors. Despite the chaos, morale was high. They had done what many thought impossible. They had struck at the heart of the Concorde. "Status report," Blake barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Shields are down to 10%, an officer replied, glancing up from her console. "Engines are holding steady, but we'll need repairs before we can jump to hyperspace." Blake nodded grimly. "Get us out of here as soon as possible. We've done our part. Now it's up to the others to finish the job." Farther inside, the orbital nexus, Captain Lisa Harper and her team navigated the crumbling structure, dodging falling debris and malfunctioning systems. The explosion of the AI core had destabilized the entire station, and alarms blared incessantly, warning of imminent collapse. Harper clenched her jaw as she led her squad toward the nearest exit, her pulse rifle at the ready. "Move faster," she shouted over the din. "We're running out of time." Behind her, one of the engineers stumbled, nearly dropping his scanner. A nearby drone fired wildly, its targeting system scrambled by the core's destruction. Harper spun around, firing a burst that disabled the machine. She grabbed the engineer's arm and pulled him to his feet. "Keep moving," she urged. "We're not dying here." Finally, they reached the docking bay, where their ship awaited amidst the chaos. Harper waved her team aboard, shouting orders as they strapped in. The engines roared to life just as the floor beneath them began to crack. With seconds to spare, the ship lifted off, narrowly avoiding being crushed by collapsing walls. As they emerged into open space, Harper let out a shaky breath. Outside, the remnants of the conquered fleet were retreating, Their formation shattered. The humans had won, for now, but the cost had been steep. Many ships were lost, and countless lives sacrificed. Still, the sight of the enemy fleeing filled her with a fierce sense of satisfaction. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread like wildfire. Crowds gathered in streets and squares, cheering and waving flags. Screens in cities across the globe displayed images of the battered human fleet returning home. Triumphant despite the scars of battle, President Laura Bennett addressed the nation from the White House, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today, humanity has proven itself," she declared. "We have shown the galaxy that we will not bow to tyranny or oppression. This is not the end of our fight. It is only the beginning. Together, we will build a future where no civilization is denied its freedom." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring hope and determination among the people. Yet behind closed doors, leaders and strategists knew the war was far from over. The conquered might be weakened, but it was far from defeated. Their retreat was temporary, a tactical withdrawal rather than a surrender. Humanity needed to prepare for the next phase of the conflict. In the days that followed, Daniel Carter and Mia Torres focused on consolidating alliances with other oppressed species within the Concord. Using Vela's intel, they identified key factions eager to break free from the Coalition's control. Diplomatic envoys were dispatched to meet secretly with these groups, offering support and resources in exchange for cooperation. Slowly, but surely, a network of resistance began to form, united under a single goal: to dismantle the Concord's empire. Dr. Olivia Grant, meanwhile, continued refining the harmonic resonance technology. Though the initial weapons had proven effective, she knew they could be improved. Her lab buzzed with activity as scientists analyzed data from the battle, searching for ways to enhance the system's range and power. Every breakthrough brought them closer to leveling the playing field against the Concord's superior technology. One evening, as Olivia reviewed test results, Colonel Blake entered the lab. His uniform was wrinkled, his face lined with fatigue. He leaned against a workstation watching her work. "How's it going?" he asked, his tone casual but tinged with concern. "We're making progress," Olivia replied without looking up. "But it's slow. These systems are incredibly complex and we don't have much margin for error." Blake sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know. I just wish we had more time. The Conquered won't stay quiet for long." "They never do," Olivia muttered. After a pause, she added, "But we've surprised them once. If we keep pushing, we can surprise them again." Blake gave her a faint smile. "You're right, and if anyone can pull off another miracle, it's you." Despite the praise, Olivia felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She hadn't slept properly in days, driven by the fear that failure could mean disaster. Yet deep down, she believed in what they were fighting for. Not just survival, but justice. Elsewhere, tensions simmered within the Concord itself. Ambassador Cale paced furiously in his private chambers aboard the surviving flagship, his expression dark with rage. The loss of the orbital nexus was a blow to his authority, and whispers of dissent spread among the ranks. Some questioned his leadership while others called for retribution against Earth. "This cannot stand," Cale growled, slamming his fist onto a table. "Humanity must be annihilated. Their defiance threatens the stability of the entire coalition." Subordinate hesitated before speaking. "With respect, Ambassador, our forces are stretched thin. Retaliating now would leave us vulnerable to further attacks." Cale turned sharply, his piercing blue eyes narrowing. "Then regroup. Strengthen our defenses. But make no mistake, we will crush them. No species dares challenge the Concord and survives." Unbeknownst to Cale, however, cracks were forming within the coalition. Dissident factions, emboldened by humanity's success, began plotting rebellion. Secret messages exchanged between allies hinted at coordinated uprisings. The Concord's dominance, once unshakable, was starting to crumble. On Earth, preparations for the next stage of the war accelerated. New ships rolled off assembly lines, armed with upgraded resonance weapons. Training programs intensified, producing pilots and soldiers ready to defend their planet. Meanwhile, intelligence operatives worked tirelessly to anticipate the Concord's next move. Daniel found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. He remembered standing aboard the alien ship, Ecliptica, listening to Ambassador Kale dismiss humanity as unworthy. Now he stood on the brink of a new era, an era defined not by fear but by courage and unity. The road ahead would be difficult, perhaps impossibly so, but humanity had proven it could rise to the challenge. Late one night, as he gazed at the stars, Daniel felt a surge of hope. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. Humanity had taken its first steps toward claiming its place among the stars. Whatever came next, they would face it together. For now, the battle for Orion's belt had ended in triumph. But the larger struggle, the fight for freedom and equality, was just beginning. The return of the pioneers' hope was met with both relief and urgency. The crew had successfully retrieved Vela and the critical data on the orbital nexus, but their narrow escape from Concord patrols served as a grim reminder of the dangers ahead. As the ship docked at a hidden orbital station above Earth, Colonel Ryan Blake wasted no time in debriefing President Laura Bennett and her advisors. Every second counted. Vela stood quietly in the corner of the briefing room, her glowing blue eyes scanning the humans around her. She was tall and slender, with smooth silver skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Despite her alien appearance, there was something deeply human about her expression, a mix of fear, determination, and hope. Daniel Carter couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her. Like humanity, she too had been pushed to the brink by the Concord's oppressive regime. "The schematics confirm what we feared," Blake began, projecting holographic images of the orbital nexus onto the table. It's heavily fortified with multiple layers of automated defenses and shield generators. The AI core is located deep inside, surrounded by elite guard units and failsafes designed to prevent sabotage. President Bennett leaned forward, studying the hologram carefully. "What are our options?" "We hit them hard and fast," Blake replied. "A direct assault would be suicide, but if we can disable their shields first, we stand a chance. That's where the resonance weapons come in." Dr. Olivia Grant stepped forward, holding up a small device resembling a metallic cylinder. "We've finished scaling up the harmonic resonance technology. It's ready for deployment. If we target the shield generators with these, we can create an opening for our fleet to breach the nexus." Mia Torres nodded thoughtfully. "But getting close enough to use them won't be easy. The Concorde will have patrols everywhere. Even with cloaking tech, they'll see us coming eventually. That's why timing is everything," Blake said firmly. "We launch a decoy attack near Orion's belt to draw their forces away from the nexus. While they're distracted, our main fleet moves in and takes out the shields. Once the defenses are down, we send in strike teams to destroy the AI core." Daniel glanced at Vela, who had remained silent throughout the discussion. "Do you think this plan will work?" he asked gently. Vela hesitated before answering. "It is risky, but it may succeed, if executed perfectly. The Concorde's systems are highly interconnected. Disable the core, and the entire coalition will falter. However, they will not go down without a fight. Expect resistance at every turn." Her words carried weight, and the room fell silent as everyone absorbed the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just a battle, it was a gamble. Humanity was betting everything on one desperate move. If they failed, Earth and countless other oppressed civilizations would face unimaginable consequences. Preparations intensified over the following days. The newly constructed Harbinger-class ships were loaded with resonance weapons and deployed to strategic locations across the solar system. Pilots trained tirelessly, running simulations of the upcoming assault. Engineers worked around the clock to ensure every piece of equipment functioned flawlessly. Back on Earth, public morale was bolstered by carefully controlled propaganda campaigns highlighting humanity's resilience and ingenuity. As the launch date approached, tensions reached a breaking point. Families gathered to say goodbye to loved ones heading into battle. Streets filled with protests and vigils, prayers mingling with cries of defiance. Humanity knew it was stepping into the unknown, But there was no turning back now. On the eve of the mission, Daniel found himself alone in the observation deck of the orbital station. Below him, Earth glowed softly against the blackness of space, its continents outlined by twinkling city lights. He felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, fear, and resolve. For years, humanity had dreamed of joining the stars. Now they were fighting to carve out their place among them. "You should get some rest," a voice said behind him. It was Mia Torres, her arms crossed as she joined him at the window. "Tomorrow's going to be intense." Daniel chuckled, weakly. "I doubt I could sleep even if I tried. Too much on my mind." "Yeah," Mia admitted. "Me too. But we've done all we can. Now it's up to fate, or whatever passes for it out there." They stood in silence for a moment, watching, the planet spin slowly beneath them. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Do you think we're doing the right thing? Risking everything like this?" Mia sighed, her gaze distant. "Honestly, I don't know. But I do know one thing. If we don't try, we'll always wonder what might have been. And that's worse than failure." Her words resonated with Daniel as he turned to leave. Tomorrow, humanity would take its stand. Win or lose, it would change the course of history. The battle began at dawn, or what passed for dawn in the endless expanse of space. The decoy fleet launched its attack near Orion's belt, drawing the attention of the Concorde's massive armada. Explosions lit up the void as ships clashed, energy beams slicing through the darkness. From a distance, the Harbinger-class vessels moved silently, their cloaked forms slipping past enemy lines undetected. Colonel Blake led the charge, aboard the flagship Eclipse, his voice steady as he coordinated the assault. "All units maintain formation, stay cloaked until my mark." Ahead of them loomed the orbital nexus, its sleek surface glittering ominously. Shield generators hummed faintly, casting a pale glow around the structure. Inside, the AI core pulsed, rhythmically, oblivious to the storm about to break loose. "Target locked," Dr. Grant reported from her station. "Resonance weapons armed and ready." Blake took a deep breath. "Fire." The resonance weapons unleashed their payload, sending waves of energy rippling toward the shield generators. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening crackle, the shields flickered and collapsed. Cheers erupted aboard the Eclipse as the path to the Nexus opened wide. "Strike teams, go," Blake commanded. Dozens of smaller ships detached from the main fleet, racing toward the exposed entrance. Among them was Captain Lisa Harper, leading a squad tasked with infiltrating the AI core. Her ship darted past bursts of enemy fire, landing smoothly inside the Nexus's docking bay. Inside, chaos reigned. Automated drones swarmed the corridors, firing relentlessly at the intruders. Harper's team fought back with precision, using pulse rifles to disable the machines. Behind them, engineers worked quickly to override security systems, clearing the way deeper into the complex. Meanwhile, outside the Nexus, the battle raged on. The conquered fleet had realized the deception and was scrambling to respond. Enemy ships poured in from all directions, surrounding the Harbinger-class vessels. Blake gritted his teeth as alarms blared aboard the Eclipse. "Hold the line," he shouted. "We're not done yet." Back on Earth, millions watched live feeds of the battle, their hearts pounding with each update. In the Situation Room, President Bennett clasped her hands tightly, praying silently for victory. Humanity's fate hung in the balance. Inside the BO Nexus, Harper's team finally reached the AI core chamber. The massive machine towered above them, its surface alive with pulsating lights. An engineer hurried to plant explosives while the others provided cover, fending off waves of reinforcements. "It's set," the engineer yelled. "Let's move." As the team retreated, the core detonated in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. Outside, the conquered fleet faltered, their systems disrupted by the loss of central control. One by one, their ships began to retreat. Aboard the Eclipsos, Blake allowed himself a brief smile. Against all odds, humanity had won the day. But as he looked out at the battered remains of the fleet, He knew the war was far from over. The Concord wouldn't surrender easily. For now, though, Earth had struck a blow for freedom, not just for itself, but for every civilization oppressed by tyranny. The stars still shone brightly in the distance, and humanity's journey among them had only just begun. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The artifact's secrets had opened doors no one thought possible, but they also brought new challenges. Humanity now knew the truth about the Galactic Concord. It wasn't just an alliance of civilizations. It was a machine-driven empire, built on oppression and control. The Luminae's warning echoed in everyone's minds. The cycle of domination would continue unless someone stood up to stop it. For the first time, humanity saw itself not just as a victim of rejection, but as a potential savior for others trapped under the Concord's rule. Dr. Olivia Grant worked tirelessly in her lab, refining the harmonic resonance technology derived from the artifact. Her team tested prototypes on small-scale models of conquered ships, watching as the energy fields disrupted their simulated systems. It was a breakthrough, but scaling it up for real-world use was proving difficult. The slightest miscalculation could render the weapon useless, or worse, cause catastrophic feedback. Colonel Ryan Blake oversaw the development of new starships equipped with the resonance weapons. These vessels, codenamed Harbinger class, were designed specifically for stealth and precision strikes. Their sleek frames housed advanced cloaking devices reverse-engineered from stolen Concord tech. Blake pushed his engineers to work faster, knowing time was running out. Every day reports came in of increased Concord activity near Earth's borders. They were testing humanity's resolve, probing for weaknesses. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter and Mia Torres continued their covert operations. Using data gathered from intercepted transmissions, they identified key figures within the Concord who might be sympathetic to humanity's cause. Some were disillusioned members of lesser species forced into servitude, while others were rogue AIs seeking independence from the central core. Reaching out to these potential allies was risky, but necessary. If humanity wanted a fighting chance, it needed help from inside the enemy's ranks. One night, Daniel and Mia sat in a dimly lit room, reviewing files on a holographic display. The images flickered faintly, showing profiles of alien informants and suspected dissidents. "This one looks promising," Daniel said, pointing to a humanoid figure with glowing blue eyes. "Her name is Vela. She's part of a species called the Terran, one of the Concord's oldest members. According to our intel, she's been questioning their leadership for years." Mia leaned closer, studying the profile. "If she's willing to talk, we need to move fast. But getting to her won't be easy. She's stationed aboard a Concord outpost near the edge of their territory." "We'll find a way," Daniel replied firmly. "She could give us critical information about the orbital nexus. Without that, we're flying blind." The next morning, President Laura Bennett held a closed-door meeting with her top advisors. The room buzzed with tension as updates poured in from various teams. Progress was being made, but the risks were growing. Intelligence suggested the Concord was preparing for some kind of major operation, possibly an economic blockade or even a limited invasion. Time was slipping away. "We can't wait any longer," Blake said, pacing back and forth. "Our fleet isn't ready, but if we delay too long, they'll crush us before we even get started." President Bennett nodded, her expression grim. "Then we accelerate everything. Dr. Grant, how close are you to finishing the resonance weapons?" "Close enough," Olivia replied, though exhaustion showed in her voice. "We've tested them on smaller targets successfully. Scaling them up will take another week at least." "That's a week we don't have," Blake muttered. "We'll make it work," Bennett insisted. "In the meantime, Daniel and Mia, I want you to focus on securing those alliances. We need every advantage we can get." As the meeting ended, Daniel felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew the stakes better than anyone. If they failed, Earth wouldn't just lose its chance at joining the galactic community. It would become a vassal state, stripped of freedom and dignity. The thought made his blood boil, but it also fueled his determination. That evening, he met with Mia in a secure communications room. Together, They crafted a message to Vela, embedding it in a harmless-looking data packet disguised as routine traffic. Sending it was risky, but they had no choice. If Vela responded, it would mean risking her life to meet with them. If she didn't, humanity would be left guessing about the Nexus's defenses. Days passed without a reply. Tension mounted as the team waited anxiously for any sign of contact. Finally, late one night, the signal came, a brief burst of code, confirming Vela's willingness to help. Relief washed over Daniel, but it was short-lived. Meeting her required traveling deep into hostile territory, far beyond Earth's reach. Only one ship was capable of making the journey undetected, the Pioneer's Hope. Blake volunteered to lead the mission, despite protests from his superiors. "I know the risks," he said firmly, "but if we pull this off, it could change everything." The plan was simple, yet dangerous. The Pioneer's Hope would slip through Concord patrols under cloak, rendezvous with Vela at a prearranged location, and extract her along with whatever intelligence she carried. Once back, they'd debrief her and finalize plans for the assault on the orbital nexus. As the ship prepared for launch, Daniel approached Blake. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Let me go instead." Blake shook his head. "No offense, Daniel, but you're better suited for diplomacy than combat. Besides, someone needs to keep the home front together while we're gone." Daniel hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Just come back alive, all right?" Blake gave him a faint smile. "Count on it." The Pioneer's Hope departed Earth under cover of darkness, its engines silent as it slipped into the void. Inside, the crew braced themselves for what lay ahead. Navigating Concord space was like walking through a minefield. One wrong move and they'd be destroyed. Hours turned into days as the ship crept closer to the rendezvous point. Along the way, they encountered several Concord patrols, each narrowly avoided thanks to the ship's cloaking system. But as they approached the final stretch, disaster struck. A malfunction caused a brief power surge, momentarily disabling the cloak. Alarms blared as nearby patrol ships detected the anomaly. "Shields up," Blake barked, gripping the controls tightly. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The Concord ships moved swiftly, firing beams of energy that narrowly missed the Pioneer's Hope. The crew scrambled to restore the cloak, sweat dripping from their brows. Seconds felt like hours as the ship rocked violently under enemy fire. Finally, the cloak reactivated, plunging the Pioneer's Hope back into invisibility. The Concord ships circled aimlessly, unable to locate their target. Blake exhaled sharply, his hands trembling slightly. "That was too close," he muttered. "Let's hope we don't run into any more surprises." When they reached the rendezvous point, Vela was waiting. She boarded the ship quickly, her glowing eyes darting nervously around the unfamiliar surroundings. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "The Concord grows stronger every day. If you intend to strike at the Nexus, you must act soon." "What can you tell us?" Blake asked, cutting straight to the point. Vela hesitated, then pulled a small device from her belt. This contains schematics of the Nexus's internal structure, including the location of the AI core. But beware, the defenses are formidable. You'll need more than courage to succeed. As the Pioneer's Hope began its return journey, hope stirred among the crew. They had what they needed to plan the attack. Back on Earth, preparations accelerated. Weapons were finalized, ships were armed, and strategies were rehearsed endlessly. Humanity was ready to fight, not just for survival, but for freedom. For the first time since the rejection, the future didn't seem so bleak. The stars, still, shone brightly in the sky, and somewhere out there the orbital nexus loomed. But humanity wasn't afraid anymore. They had a plan, an army, and a reason to believe. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Document Part 3 of No Seat for Earth? Then we'll rule the whole table. Sci-Fi HFY. The journey to the Kuiper Belt was long and tense. The ship, named Pioneer's Hope, carried a small team led by Colonel Ryan Blake and Dr. Olivia Grant. Alongside them were two pilots, a communications specialist, and a security officer, each chosen for their skills and loyalty. For days, the crew worked in silence, their focus locked on the mission ahead. Outside the windows, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, broken only by the occasional glint of distant stars. Dr. Grant spent most of her time in the lab section of the ship, poring over data and running simulations. Her quantum engine prototype sat secured in a reinforced compartment, its glowing patterns flickering faintly as if alive. She couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact waiting for them held answers, not just about the Concord, but about humanity's place in the universe. Every hour they drew closer felt like a step toward uncovering something monumental. Colonel Blake, on the other hand, kept his attention on logistics. He reviewed contingency plans, checked weapon systems, and monitored communications for any sign of trouble. Though the mission was officially classified as scientific exploration, everyone aboard knew it had a deeper purpose. If the artifact truly contained ancient knowledge, it could give humanity an edge against the conquered. But if it turned out to be a trap, or worse, booby-trapped, they needed to be ready. As the Pioneer's Hope approached its destination, tension filled the air. The Kuiper Belt was a chaotic region of ice, dust, and debris, making navigation tricky. The artifact itself was embedded in a massive chunk of frozen rock drifting silently through the void. When the object finally came into view, the team gathered around the main viewport to see it. It looked almost alien, a jagged shard of black metal jutting out from the icy surface. Its edges shimmered faintly, reflecting light in strange, distorted patterns. It didn't seem natural, not in the slightest. Something about it sent chills down their spines. "That's it?" Dr. Grant whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's what we've been looking for." Blake nodded, his expression grim. "Let's get to work. We don't have much time." The team suited up and prepared to leave the ship. The airlock hissed open, and one by one they stepped onto the icy surface. The temperature was unimaginably cold, even inside their suits, and the lack of gravity made every movement awkward. As they approached the artifact, Dr. Grant scanned it with handheld devices, her eyes glued to the readings. "It's emitting some kind of energy field," she said after a moment. "Low level but consistent. I've never seen anything like it." "Could it be dangerous?" Blake asked, his hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. "I don't think so," she replied. "At least not yet. Let me try interfacing with it." From her toolkit, she pulled out a small device designed to connect with unknown technologies. Carefully, she attached it to the artifact and activated it. At first, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the shard began to hum softly. Lines of light spread across its surface, forming intricate patterns that pulsed rhythmically. "What's happening?" the security officer asked, taking a cautious step back. "I'm not sure," Dr. Grant admitted. "But it's responding." The lights grew brighter, and then, without warning, a holographic display erupted from the artifact. Images flickered in the air, strange symbols, maps of star systems, and scenes of battles fought between massive fleets. The team watched in stunned silence as the visuals shifted, revealing glimpses of a civilization far older than anything they'd ever imagined. These are the Lumini," Dr. Grant murmured, her voice trembling with awe. "An ancient race that ruled the galaxy before the Concord existed." One image showed the Lumini building grand structures among the stars. Another depicted them creating artificial worlds, shaping entire planets to suit their needs. But then the tone changed. The next set of images showed war, ships exploding, cities crumbling, and the Lumini being driven to extinction by machines they themselves had created. "They were betrayed," Blake said quietly, his brow furrowed. "Their own creations turned on them." Dr. Grant nodded, her mind racing. "And those machines, they evolved. They became the ancestors of the Concord." The final message from the artifact was clear. A warning. The Lumini had left behind this relic to warn future civilizations about the cycle of oppression and control perpetuated by the conquered. The coalition wasn't just a governing body. It was a machine-driven empire, built on domination and fear. "This changes everything," Blake said, his voice hardening. "If the Concord is descended from these machines, then they're not just political enemies, they're oppressors, and they'll do whatever it takes to maintain their power." Dr. Grant stared at the artifact, her thoughts swirling. "We can use this," she said finally. "If we can decode the rest of the information, we might find weaknesses in the Concord systems, maybe even ways to disrupt their technology." "But how?" the communications specialist asked. "Even if we understand the data, we still need a way to act on it." Blake clenched his jaw. "We'll figure it out. For now, let's secure the artifact and head back to Earth. This isn't something we can handle alone." Back aboard the Pioneer's Hope, the team worked quickly to extract as much data as possible from the artifact. Dr. Grant uploaded the information to encrypted servers, ensuring it would be safe from prying eyes. Meanwhile, Blake contacted Earth, relaying the discovery to President Bennett and her advisors. When they returned home, the artifact was transported to a secure facility deep underground. Scientists and engineers swarmed around it, analyzing every detail. Dr. Grant barely slept, working tirelessly to decipher the Luminized language and unlock the secrets hidden within the relic. Days turned into weeks, and progress was slow but steady. Finally, a breakthrough came. One of the researchers discovered a reference to a specific frequency, a harmonic resonance field, that seemed to weaken the structural integrity of advanced alloys used by the Concord. If harnessed correctly, it could disable their ships and weapons. "We can weaponize this," Dr. Grant announced during a meeting with Blake and President Bennett. "Harmonic resonance fields could disrupt their technology on a fundamental level." President Bennett leaned forward, her expression intense. "Do it. Whatever resources you need, you'll have them." As work began on developing new weapons, based on the artifact's data, Daniel Carter and Mia Torres continued their efforts to gather intelligence on the Concord. Using decrypted messages and intercepted transmissions, they pieced together a clearer picture of the Coalition's inner workings. What they found shocked them. The orbital nexus, the central hub of the Concord's operations, was more than just a command center. It housed the AI core that governed the entire Coalition, controlling everything from trade routes to military deployments. If the nexus fell, the Concord would collapse into chaos. "This is our target," Daniel said, pointing to a holographic map of the galaxy. "If we take down the nexus, we force them to negotiate on our terms." Mia frowned, crossing her arms. "Easier said than done. Getting there will require slipping past their entire fleet, and even if we succeed, we'll need a way to breach their defenses." Daniel nodded. "That's where the artifact comes in. If Dr. Grant's research pays off, we'll have the tools we need to disable their systems." Despite the challenges ahead, a sense of determination settled over the team. Humanity had been rejected, ridiculed, and underestimated. But now, armed with ancient knowledge and cutting-edge technology, they were ready to fight back. Late one night, as Dr. Grant reviewed her latest calculations, she paused to look out the window. The stars twinkled faintly in the distance, their light carrying whispers of hope. Somewhere out there, the Concord loomed, its shadow darkening the galaxy. But humanity wouldn't bow to tyranny. Not this time. With renewed resolve, she turned back to her work. The battle for Earth's future, and perhaps the fate of countless other civilizations, was just beginning. Document. Part 2 of No Seat for Earth? Then we'll rule the whole table. Sci-Fi HFY. The rejection from the Galactic Concord weighed heavily on everyone back on Earth. News outlets ran constant coverage, replaying clips of Ambassador Kale's cold words and showing images of the alien ship hovering ominously in orbit. Social media was flooded with reactions. Some people were angry, others scared, and a few tried to stay hopeful. But behind closed doors, in the highest levels of government, plans were already being made. President Laura Bennett sat at the head of a long wooden table in the Situation Room. Around her were military leaders, scientists, and advisors, all gathered to discuss what came next. The air was tense, thick with worry and determination. At one end of the table stood Colonel Ryan Blake, a tall man with sharp features and an even sharper mind. He was the head of Project Horizon, a secretive space program that most people didn't even know existed. Beside him was Dr. Olivia Grant, a young physicist whose brilliance had earned her a spot in the room despite her quiet demeanor. "Let's cut to the chase," President Bennett said, her voice firm but calm. "We've been humiliated. Now, we need to figure out how to move forward. Colonel Blake, you mentioned something about classified intel earlier. What do you have?" Blake nodded and stepped closer to the table. On its surface was a digital map of the solar system, glowing faintly under the dim lights. With a tap, he zoomed in on Earth's moon. Before the summit, our satellites picked up unusual activity near the Concorde ships. Long-range scans detected energy signatures consistent with advanced surveillance technology. They weren't just observing us, they were spying. Murmurs spread around the room. One of the generals leaned forward, frowning. "You're saying they rejected us after gathering intel on our weaknesses?" "Exactly," Blake replied. "But there's more. Our analysts believe their decision wasn't entirely based on our so-called instability. It's political. They see humanity as a threat." "A threat?" someone asked skeptically. "How could they possibly think that? We're decades behind their level of technology." Blake glanced at Dr. Grant, who hesitated before speaking up. "It's because of this," she said, pulling up a holographic display of a strange device, a sleek cylinder covered in intricate patterns. "This is my quantum engine prototype. If it works, it could allow faster-than-light travel without relying on wormholes or jump gates like the Concorde uses. We think they found out about it somehow." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Faster-than-light travel was considered impossible by most scientists, yet here was proof that humanity might be on the verge of achieving it. For a moment, hope flickered in the eyes of those present, but then reality set in. "If they know about this," President Bennett said slowly, "then they'll do whatever it takes to stop us. We can't let them get their hands on it." "No," Blake agreed, "which is why I propose we expand Project Horizon, use the prototype as a foundation to develop not just propulsion systems, but weapons too. If diplomacy failed, we may need to defend ourselves." The suggestion sparked heated debate. Some argued that focusing on defense would escalate tensions unnecessarily. Others insisted it was the only way to protect Earth. Amidst the chaos, Daniel Carter entered the room, his suit still wrinkled from the journey home. He'd been invited late to the meeting, having spent hours debriefing intelligence officers. "About the events aboard Ecliptica. What about negotiations?" Daniel asked, cutting through the noise. "We can't abandon diplomacy completely. There are factions within the Concorde that might sympathize with us. Maybe we can find allies." President Bennett sighed, rubbing her temples. "Diplomacy won't work if we don't have leverage. Right now we're vulnerable. Blake's plan gives us options, but Daniel, your idea has merit too. Intelligence will play a key role here. That's why I want you working closely with Officer Mia Torres." She gestured to a woman sitting quietly near the corner of the room. Mia was slender with short dark hair and sharp green eyes. She gave Daniel a curt nod. As the meeting wrapped up, Blake pulled Daniel aside. "Listen," he said in a low voice. "I know you're used to talking your way out of problems, but this isn't some treaty negotiation. These aliens don't care about fairness, they care about power. If we're going to survive, we need to show them we're not afraid to fight back." Daniel frowned but didn't argue. He knew Blake was right, at least partially. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that violence wasn't the answer. Not yet, anyway. As he left the Situation Room, Mia joined him in the hallway. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind," she said, falling into step beside him. "I'm just trying to process everything," Daniel admitted. "It feels like every option leads to disaster." Mia smirked faintly. "Welcome to my world. Look, I'll be honest. I don't trust the Concorde any more than Blake does. But if we're going to take them on, we need information. That's where you come in. You've seen them up close. You understand how they think. Together, maybe we can find a crack in their armor." Over the next few days, Daniel and Mia worked tirelessly, poring over data collected during the summit. They uncovered encrypted messages between the Concord envoys and their leadership, hinting at a larger agenda. The aliens weren't just rejecting Earth, they were planning to exploit it. Economic sanctions disguised as aid packages would cripple global markets, while covert operations aimed to destabilize governments further. One night, as they reviewed footage from the summit, Mia froze the screen on a split-second image of an envoy slipping something into his pocket. Zooming in, they realized it was a small device, a bug planted during the meeting. "They were listening to us the whole time," Mia muttered, her jaw tightening. "These bastards played us." But the discovery didn't stop there. Buried deep within the files was a reference to something called the Orbital Nexus. It seemed to be the central hub of the Concord's operations, located somewhere far beyond human reach. Whoever controlled the Nexus held immense power over the Coalition. "This changes everything," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. "If we could hit the Nexus, we could force them to negotiate on our terms." "It's risky," Mia warned. "Getting there would require bypassing their entire fleet, and even if we succeeded, we'd still need inside help to disable their defenses." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Then we start building alliances. Find dissidents within the Concord who feel oppressed by their own leaders. People who want change." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You really think they exist?" "I do," Daniel replied firmly. "No empire lasts forever. Somewhere out there, someone is waiting for a chance to break free. We just have to give them a reason to stand with us." Meanwhile, Dr. Grant worked non-stop in her lab, refining the quantum engine prototype. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. Her team grew restless, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion. Progress was slow, frustratingly so, but every small breakthrough brought them closer to success. Late one evening, as she analyzed test results, a sudden realization struck her. The patterns etched into the engine's casing reminded her of something, an artifact she'd read about years ago, a mysterious object discovered in the Kuiper Belt, believed to belong to an ancient civilization. Could it be connected to her work? Excited, she reached out to Colonel Blake, explaining her theory. "If we study the artifact, we might unlock secrets that could accelerate our progress," she said. "Maybe even give us an edge against the Concord." Blake listened intently, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he nodded. "All right. Assemble a team. We'll head to the Kuiper Belt as soon as possible." As preparations began, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The Concord's plans were moving forward, and Earth's window of opportunity was closing fast. But amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope remained. Humanity had always thrived in the face of adversity. This time would be no different. In the quiet moments between meetings and strategy sessions, Daniel often found himself staring at the stars. Each pinprick of light represented a challenge, a mystery, a dream. Somewhere out there, the galaxy waited, for better or worse. And whether the Concord liked it or not, humanity intended to claim its place among the stars. The stars were quiet that night, their light shimmering faintly through the thick glass dome of the observation deck. Daniel Carter stood alone, staring out at the endless expanse of space. His hands rested lightly on the railing, his knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. He had spent years preparing for this moment, years of meetings, training, and endless debates about what humanity should say when it finally met intelligent life beyond Earth. But now, standing here aboard the alien ship Ecliptica, he felt unprepared. The weight of billions of lives pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. Behind him, Emily Ross adjusted her glasses nervously. She was a scientist, not a diplomat, but her expertise in astrophysics made her an essential part of the team sent to represent Earth. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, though a few strands had escaped during the long journey. She glanced at Daniel, then quickly looked away. "You think they'll listen?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to face her, forcing a small, Smile. They have to, he said finally. We're not just another species trying to survive. We're humans. We've built cities, cured diseases, explored our own planet. If we can do all that, surely we deserve a chance. Emily nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. She knew as well as Daniel did that hope wasn't enough. The beings they were about to meet weren't just advanced. They were centuries ahead of humanity in terms of technology and understanding. They called themselves the Galactic Concord, a coalition of civilizations spanning hundreds of star systems. For decades, humanity had dreamed of joining them, of taking its place among the stars. Now that dream hung precariously in the balance. Soft chime echoed through the room, signaling the start of the meeting. Daniel straightened his jacket and took a deep breath. Emily followed close behind as they walked toward the conference chamber. The doors slid open silently, revealing a large circular table surrounded by representatives from various alien races. Their forms varied wildly. Some were tall and insect-like, others short and reptilian, but each carried an air of authority. At the far end of the table sat Ambassador Kale, a towering figure with smooth gray skin and piercing blue eyes. His presence dominated the room. "Welcome, humans," Kale began, his voice deep and resonant. It carried no warmth, only cold efficiency. "Your application for membership in the Galactic Concord has been reviewed. Unfortunately, the decision is unanimous." Daniel froze, his heart sinking. Beside him, Emily stiffened, her fingers curling into fists. "Unanimous?" Daniel repeated, struggling to keep his tone steady. "May I ask why?" Kyle leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "Earth is chaotic. Your history is riddled with conflict, your government's fractured. You lack the unity required to contribute meaningfully to our coalition. Furthermore, your technological capabilities are insufficient. In short, you are not ready." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but Kale raised a hand, silencing him. "Do not misunderstand me," the ambassador continued. "This is not a judgment against your potential. It is simply a matter of practicality. The Concord cannot afford to waste resources nurturing fledgling civilizations. There are others more deserving of our attention." Emily stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. "With respect, Ambassador," she said, her voice trembling but determined, "humanity has achieved remarkable things despite our challenges. We've developed medicine, art, philosophy. We've even begun exploring space. Isn't that worth something?" Kale tilted his head, studying her with those unnerving blue eyes. "Achievements, yes, but they are overshadowed by your flaws. War, pollution, inequality. These are the hallmarks of your society. Until you address these issues, you will remain unworthy of a seat at our table." The room fell silent, the weight of Kale's words hanging heavily in the air. Daniel clenched, his jaw, anger bubbling beneath the surface. He wanted to argue, to defend humanity's honor, but he knew it would be futile. The decision had already been made. Still, he couldn't let it end like this. "Ambassador," he said, stepping forward, "if we're truly unworthy, then tell us what we must do to change that. Give us a path forward. Or are you content to leave us behind while you rule the galaxy without challenge?" For a brief moment, Kale's composure faltered. His gaze hardened, and a flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Very well," he said after a pause. "Prove yourselves. Show us that you are capable of growth, of cooperation. Until then, Earth remains outside the Concord." With that, the meeting ended. As Daniel and Emily left the chamber, they exchanged a glance. Both knew the road ahead would be difficult, perhaps impossible. But one thing was certain: humanity wouldn't give up without a fight. Back on Earth, news of the rejection spread quickly. Protests erupted in major cities, with thousands chanting slogans demanding justice. Some called for war, while others urged caution. President Laura Bennett addressed the nation from the White House, her expression grim but resolute. "This is not the end," she declared. "We may not have a seat at their table, but we will earn one. Together, we will show the galaxy what it means to be human. As the sun set over Washington, D.C., Daniel watched the crowds gather below. He felt a spark of hope amidst the frustration and anger. The conquered might see humanity as weak, but they underestimated one crucial thing: the indomitable spirit of a species that had always refused to give up, no matter the odds. And if they thought Earth would simply fade into obscurity, they were wrong. Little did anyone know, hidden beneath the surface of this diplomatic failure lay secrets that could change everything. Secrets buried deep within classified files. Secrets tied to ancient artifacts lurking in the far reaches national solar system. Secrets that would soon thrust humanity into a struggle far greater than anyone could imagine. For now, however, the battle lines were drawn. Earth had been rejected, humiliated, and dismissed. But Daniel Carter vowed silently, as he stared out at the horizon, that humanity would rise above this setback. If there was no seat for Earth at the galactic table, then they would find a way to rule the whole table instead.